My name is Chris Kmit, owner of Cemetery Pulp. We are Oddities and comic book store.
Do you do D&D at the store here?
Yeah, we do one-shots here. We do, we like teach people how to play. So if you've never played before, sit down and then you can even like learn how to play right from the get-go. It's one of those games you can easily drop in and just hit the ball running.
How long is a game?
I usually run them for 4 hours. That's typically how long it usually is. If you build your own character beforehand, that can be, 2 or 3 hours in itself. But I have pre-generated characters that I let people use that kind of just have a whole wide range of classes and archetypes and things like that. So you can definitely pick which fantasy you want to live.
With D&D, do you have like a certain amount of points? Like you have like 50 points and you can put it to like stamina, endurance, skills?
So like the way they do that, there's a couple different ways to do it. You can either roll for it, so keep it all random, or you can even use their what they call a point buy system. And like they say, like you said, they give you like 27 points, and each one of those corresponds to a different level of stat, and you can put those where you want to go. So if you have a wizard, you can be more smart, whereas if you have a barbarian, you can be more strong and more, constitution, more hardy. I always use the tomato analogies. So the stats in D&D are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Those are the 6 stats they use for everything. And I always liken that to a tomato. So strength is if you can crush a tomato. Dexterity is if you can catch a tomato without crushing it. Constitution is if you can eat a bad tomato and not die. Intelligence is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that tomatoes not belong in a fruit salad. And then charisma is being able to sell a tomato-based fruit salad. So I always liken those things like that.
So the tomato analogy it makes sense to me. So if somebody comes in off the street and they want to play D&D, is it like elitist where everybody's like, oh, this new person, they don't know shit?
If that happens, I kick that person out. I do not stand for the elitist stuff because that's been a really hard thing for a lot of people to get over. A lot of new people who are playing, a lot of women who play, are intimidated by that elitist kind of stereotype that if you step into a game that everybody else has been playing for years, they're gonna be like, oh, you can't do this because you haven't played for as long as we have. No. I don't stand for that. Every game that I play, I tell them straight up, the only rule here is don't be a dick. If you're a dick, I'm kicking you out. I want to make sure that everybody can play, everyone can have fun, because it's one of those things that the group that you have can influence very greatly the game that you have. So everyone writes the story in their own little ways, and it's really fun that way.
What does someone need to start playing D&D? Like if they see this and they know that you offer game nights, is that what you call it?
I mean, yeah, we do one-shot game nights, yeah.
One shot. And what does one shot mean?
One shot means it's one story on one day. So it's for 4 hours. It'll be a start and an end to a story. A lot of the D&D games will go over the course of years or months. I'm in a campaign right now where it's been going for about 2 years now. Same characters, and you kind of go through different scenarios, adventures, and things like that. But the one shots are just little bite-sized things that you dip your toe in for 4 hours. You don't have to commit to a year-long kind of scenario. But excuse me, just to get started, all you need really is yourself. We'll let you borrow dice. You don't need to bring your own dice. If you have some that we have here you like, you're more than welcome to have, buy some. We're going to let you try them out during the game. And there's even basically a pencil and paper is all I really need. And we'll give you all that too. So that's from there, you keep going.
How many different dice are there in a game, and what do each dice represent?
So it's usually based on damage is the biggest thing that differentiates those dice. They call it a D20 system. It's a 20-sided die is the main dice, but there are 7 different polyhedral dice. So you've got D12, D20, D10, D6, D8, D4. And all of them are used for different things. So if you have, say, a dagger, it's not a whole lot of damage. It's a D4 damage. Whereas if you have a giant maul, like a big giant hammer, it's a D12 of damage. So it usually goes those little fluctuations there, but can also be your D20 tests a lot of times if you're rolling to see if you can complete an action. If you want to see how sneaky you're going to be when you're trying to infiltrate this castle. You roll d20. If you're very good at sneaking, you have a little modifier for your stealth. You add that on there, and then you can see what happens.
Wow, there's a lot to it. So they show up. They obviously ask for Chris, and then what is a say I was going to come because I don't know much about it. Yeah. What would be the typical scenario that someone can expect when they come here and they play the game?
I try to run things that are a little bit more on the spooky side, just to kind of fit in with the shop. I mean, obviously, you're sitting here next to a giant table of dead animals and jars. It definitely has an aesthetic to it. So I try to keep that going with the games themselves. So I try to run things that are a little bit more horror-oriented, but not quite... I don't go as far as like body horror. I'm not trying to freak people out in their first game. I'm trying to keep it tame, but still spooky. You know, spooky is a nice line to ride.
So when they come here, you sit down, you ask for Chris, you get the dice. There will be other people here.
Yeah.
What can I expect?
So what I usually do is I hand you a bunch of sheets and I'll say, you know, these are the characters you can choose from. And I'll try to narrow it down. So the basis way I narrow it down is, do you want to hit stuff with magic or do you want to hit stuff with the sword? And then from that, we kind of go to, okay, do you want to hit stuff with this kind of magic, like nature magic? Do you want to hit stuff with arcane magic, more, you know, magic from inside of you? Do you want to hit stuff with a magic that comes from a devil patron? You know, there's different ways to kind of flavor everything you're doing. And well, there's different ways to kind of flavor everything you're doing and try to make sure that it's the game you want to play. Because that's the most important thing. You can't get into it unless it's something you want to do. And with this, it's a narrative, role-playing, story kind of driven game where if you're not into it, it's not going to be fun for anybody.
Yeah, and you definitely want people to come back.
Definitely.
Is there a charge to play?
We do charge $20 for the game. We have sign-ups online. We actually have a whole list of all of our classes on the website where you can sign up for anything. We even do character creation classes, so we teach you how to build the characters. If you want to build one before you come to the game, you can always do that beforehand too.
And do you charge extra for the character?
Character creation is $10, but I also give you a free set of dice, so it kind of works out to almost nothing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sounds interesting. I've always wondered what the different dice is for, and now that makes a lot more sense.
It's a lot of fun, honestly. It's too much fun. That's why I play 3 times a week.
3 times a week? Yeah, you are a connoisseur of the D&D.
It's one of those things that when you start getting into it really deeply, you start writing your own stories, writing your own backstories for these characters you build. And I like playing more than I like running the games. I do have fun running games. I have fun writing stories that people can kind of play in and have a little sandbox for them to kind of run around in. But I like focusing on a one character kind of scenario and really just crafting a backstory and a character fully fleshed out and then play that character in this game and that game and this game. So it's nice to have different characters to play and different across the week. So it's fun.
That's really cool. Let's take one quick break.
No problem. Drinking the same thing.
Liquid Death.
Yeah.
I figured it was a very fitting.
It's way too on brand not to have it.
Right.
Liquid Death and Ghost, like that's when we saw those two things, it's like, yeah, that's what we're having here.
Of course, yeah. And it why not go that extra little bit, right?
Everything's on brand, you know, even our shopping baskets are coffins, like all the shelves are coffin shaped. Like we try to make sure everything's on brand.
So what do we got here?
So this is Hubert. He's a 14-week human fetus. With these specimens, with the human stuff, you really can't know a whole lot about them. They go through a medical process of you know, being studied in colleges and schools and things like that. And when they enter that process, they become very, very anonymous. So if you donate your body to science, you can't really dictate where you go. If you want your body to be a certain type of research, like, you know, I'm passionate about, you know, forensic research. I want my body to go towards that. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And I've actually had people, you know, come here, try to donate their body to us to sell. And it's just, there's no legal pathway to do it, because he was like, if I don't have a good place for my body to go, I don't really want to give it up like that. So he was kind of disappointed with that whole system, but I mean, it's still a very, very good system. I definitely recommend anybody who can, definitely sign up for organ donation, things like that, because that's the one thing that we can't sell is organs, because they are in such high demand. We can sell, fetuses that are past a certain year, as long as they're before, I believe, I want to say 1940. I could be wrong on the date on that one. There'll probably be people correcting me. But there's organ moratorium dates. Bones, you can still sell those, no problem, because they don't transplant bones. They transplant organs. Obviously, fetuses, they don't transplant, but that's a hot button issue. And I feel like there's always a line with oddity collectors, whether it's wet specimens or human, and here we have both.
So you don't know where it came from is basically...
The basis that I know is that it came from private collection here in town. So it was actually a private collector who had this. She bought it from England, and her friends would give her so much crap about it that she felt like she couldn't display it. She has a whole host of oddities. She has, skulls and, human skulls and animals in jars, wet specimens. But this piece gave all of her friends such a visceral reaction that she felt like she had to hide it. And she said it was sitting in her closet for 2 years, and she's like, it's a waste to have this kind of piece not be seen. And even when she came in, she was kind of, I've got something that I think you might like here, like being quiet. I'm like, it's okay. You can show off here. This is home now. I'm going to display him in the cabinet right now. Light him up, He's going to be in spotlight all day long. So it's nice that we have this place that people can actually be themselves and have cool things to look at.
And that is in rubbing alcohol, is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Yeah, 70% isopropyl alcohol. Yep.
Yeah. How if there isn't a store like this where you have the oddities, there has to be a whole counterculture, a subculture of people that are just interested in it.
Absolutely. There's groups on Facebook that do wet specimens, especially. There's groups on Instagram. Well, that's not entirely true. I think just Facebook has groups nowadays. I'm not the best with social media, honestly. But yeah, Facebook groups, there is a whole group devoted just to wet specimen preparation. They ask questions, they go through that. I know Reddit has some forums about that too. They go through and kind of say, hey, I've got this piece, I'm doing this, but this is happening. What can you help me with? And we also do classes here, to try to help those people who are local here too. But there's oddity shops popping up all over the place too. I try to follow all the ones I see, across the country, so that if I'm ever in Chicago or Minnesota or Philadelphia, I can hit up those oddity stores and really check out what they got, because it's a cool community to be in, honestly.
Who originally makes the wet specimen? I mean, is that does it come from Planned Parenthood? I don't know. I'm drawing a blank.
I mean, this one was through the medical specimen program, so this one was most likely a college study piece. So it was probably in a school, medical school or college, and was there for study. It was there to be looked at, to be studied, to know that in 14 weeks it looks like this. That was kind of they probably had 8 or 9 of these at different stages, more likely.
All right. Yeah, that it is interesting. Yeah. I don't know if I'd keep it at my house, but I'm glad there is shops like this that you can check it out, because we all die.
Yeah.
And if you're not interested in what happens to the body after you die, I think you're in denial. No,
it's for sure. Say, right? No, it's not at all. I mean, there's a lot of books on the subject, that kind of go into that. Mary Roach writes some great books about death. Caitlin Doty writes some great ones too. There's Smoke Is in Your Eyes, Lessons from the Crematorium. She writes some great books as well. And all these little facets that you don't really realize, like the Body Farm in Virginia, where they monitor how bodies decompose to look at forensic evidence, things like that. So there's a lot of little things that people don't know about,
I guess your body, when you die, is like taxes. You can't really decide where it goes.
Yeah.
But they can take it and do whatever they want.
Yeah, as long as you're signed up for that program.
Yeah.
You know, which honestly is, you know, personally, I don't really see the value in burying, you know, and actually burying bodies, especially nowadays. You know, we put all these chemicals inside of them to make sure they don't decompose, you know, which is kind of against the way it's supposed to be. Whether like this, at least they're serving a purpose. You know, they're going and having a second life beyond death. Same thing with the animals we have. You know, it's sad when I get cute puppies, because there are a few that I get here and I'm just like, oh, like, you shouldn't be dead. You're too adorable, you know, and it hurts, you know, but at the same time, it's now they're there forever. You know, they're now living past what they were, where they were at.
Doing stuff like this, do you find yourself on a spiritual or religious path, or do you see a puppy like that and go, there's no way, if there's a God, that could do this? Or I mean, what?
No,
if you don't want to answer that, that's okay.
No,
but
I have no problem with that at all. Honestly, I'm pretty much an atheist. I'm open-minded to a lot of things. I'm also interested in a lot of different religion, just as a informational kind of thing. Not really for myself, but I'm also not going to shun anybody from their beliefs ever. You know, I want to make sure that everybody lives what they want to do. You know, whether it's, you know, Christianity or Judaism or even Satanism. You know, there's a lot of people who come in here who follow the Luciferian path or the Satanist path and things like that, and a lot of them are very happy. You know, I also have a lot of Christians come through here and also very, very happy. You know, as long as you're happy, that's the bottom line. You know. But as far as myself goes, when I'm looking at these things, no, I don't really think about that honestly all too much, just because that's not where my head goes.
Sure.
You know, I mostly think about, you know, what life this puppy or lizard or, you know, snake or even human could have led. You know, that's usually where my head goes, you know, thinking about what could have been and what was before, you know. A lot of the ones we get are pet store deaths. You know, I run to pet stores and pick up their dead. They hold things in the freezer for me so that way they're not going in the trash. You know, unfortunately, things do die at pet stores, you know, but we want to make sure that they can keep going on and not be wasted in the trash.
So you're extending the life of well, once again, I'm lost for words. You're extending the spirit or the vessel of the animal.
Yeah.
Beyond death, rather than just being a piece of trash.
Exactly. And it's, you know, a lot of places will tell you, oh, you know, we cremate everything we do. They don't. You know, it's not cost effective, unfortunately. You know, and it's a nice sentiment. People who are trying to buy, you know, lizards or puppies or kittens and things like that, who might not be thrilled with how their facilities are, you know. It's a nice sentiment for them to kind of feel warm and fuzzy about it if they do pass away. But the reality is that most of the time they go in the trash. And I want to make sure that doesn't happen. You know, it's a waste. You know, there's ways to, even in taxidermy, you know, a lot of taxidermists don't use bones. They don't use organs. They don't use fetuses, things like that. And that's where we come in. We make sure that we can use every piece, you know, make sure you use every part.
I really think a store like this is important for people to understand death, and not only life, but death too, because, you know, like you said, you can see a puppy that was died in a horrific way, maybe, and then you can see it in the wet specimen jar, or I'm just throwing a puppy out there, but you see something in a wet specimen jar, and then you're able to analyze it through the process of the death.
Yeah.
And you see the bones. And I think this is a really good place for people to get some closure and like prepare for death.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, even with, you know, the like transport coffin we have here, like a Civil War transport coffin, when you see those kinds of things, it definitely puts your mind in that headspace of, this could be me one day. I could be inhabiting this coffin, you know, and it's scary, you know, no one wants to die, that's for sure. But having this kind of stuff around makes you kind of look at more of the scientific aspect of it. Look at the fact that it is going to happen. There's no way around that. But there are ways to more or less live on, It's nice to know that if I did not donate my body to science, there'd be ways for my remains to still have purpose. So there's nice ways to think about that.
So in a way, you're giving death purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. We're giving death art and beauty and purpose, and it's trying to make it not so scary, trying to make it not so sad. The most common reaction we get when people walk in, because the wet specimens are almost the first thing you see, but the most common reaction we get is, oh, like it's sad they died. And it is. I'm never going to say it's not sad. Because like I said, there's some cute animals there that I wish were still alive. But they're not, and we can't change that. It's the same thing with the large animal heads. It's a shame that large African animal had to die, but it died 30, 40 years ago. The nice thing now is that we can prepare those heads to live on way past that. So you don't have to go out and kill another one. This one's still here. So it's a nice way of kind of recycling even the taxidermy. So it's a lot of different ways to kind of come about that to make sure that things are used to their fullest.
Did you always have a curiosity for taxidermy and death?
I did. Actually, I was definitely one of those weird kids who had a bucket of roadkill in his fort. I grew up in Ohio. There's a lot of animals out there. I was definitely a weird kid, without any any qualms about it whatsoever. And death has always been a fascination for me. Even just anatomy too. I was an artist, went to art school, did a little life drawing, did a lot of anatomy classes to kind of learn what goes inside a body and how it all works. Learning locomotion and when you do this, what actually is happening with your muscles and your bones, things like that. That's always been a fascination for me. So seeing things when I was a kid that had gotten hit by cars and seeing the insides in a way that I didn't have to kill them because I didn't want to do that. But being able to see them in a way like that I could still see what makes them tick, was a very big fascination for me.
So you were fascinated with roadkill and all that stuff. Where did you said you're from Ohio?
Ohio, yeah, hour south of Cleveland.
And did you graduate from there?
Yeah. Graduated from Ohio, Cloverleaf, tiny little small town in Lodi. It's yay big. The town I lived in was called Seville. It has one stoplight, but we also had the Giants of Seville. So that in the I want to say late 1800s, there was a couple. She was 8'2", and he was like 7'11", and they got together through the circus. He was actually a general in the Civil War, and met through the circus after the war ended, and got married, and just kind of traveled the world being the Giants, and they've eventually ended up settling in my hometown in Seville.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because even by today's standards, that's really tall.
Really tall.
And what year was this?
Late 1800s, so after the Civil War.
So people were on average around 5'5" to 5'6", right?
Yeah, I mean much shorter. Especially if you look at the bones we have, everyone's always like, "Oh, they're so small." Were they small people? Like, well, everyone was smaller back then. It's one of those things where the bones we have are very old because they have to be. They have to go through that medical process to be released. So they got to. I don't know what the exact time is, but they have to go through a while before they can actually be released and be sold like that.
So, yeah, wow, 8 foot tall. You said
Yeah.
8 foot?
8'2", yeah.
And so that was kind of like the town, like, lore.
Yeah, I mean, they have a whole little museum in my little small town. It's only open one day out of the month. It's the first Sunday of every month. But they still have like their door frame inside the museum. They still hold their clothes inside the museum, so you can actually stand next to a mannequin that's built for their clothes, and it's imposing. They had to have special door frames built for their house. They tried to have a kid, but it was stillborn. It was so large that it couldn't live.
Do you think that enabled you to be more into the weird and odd?
I definitely think it had a big impact on me. Honestly, it's something I look back on quite a bit because it was a cool museum. It's tiny, it's small, but it holds such a special place in my heart. We used to go there for school field trips in elementary school. A friend of mine still has a hat he bought there. It's those little things like that I still remember from that time. And seeing that 8 foot tall mannequin with the clothes on, especially the old clothes like that, petticoats and everything like that. It was sparked some interest in there for sure.
Yeah, and they would have had to have them custom made.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know if all clothes were custom made back then. I'm sure that they didn't have Walmarts or stuff like that, but like that would have been like a very specific.
Even when he was in the military, when he was in the Civil War, he had to have his uniforms especially made because he was so tall. And I can't imagine what that was like, seeing him, on a battlefield, especially Civil War times. That's not like hiding and ducking through trees. It's stand up fighting like that. So it's strange.
It would be very, very scary to see someone just as a giant walking through the battlefield.
Oh yeah, imposing as hell.
Yeah. So you grew up, you graduated there.
Yeah.
How did you come to Vegas after that, or what happened?
So I went to college for art. Went to college for animation in Pittsburgh, and art institute in Pittsburgh, and from there moved to California, trying to get an animation job. Trying to be an animator in the movies. Trying to do special effects, things like that, which also kind of is that weird kind of horror thing too. Trying to be the guy who makes the heads explode inside movies and things like that. That was always something I wanted to do, but I wanted to do the computer end of it. I wanted to be the guy making dragons and whatnot. And it's hard to get in that industry. It's hard to break into that kind of lifestyle. So it's ended up doing a lot of signs. Actually, signs was where I kind of ended up, and doing car wraps and things like that. And then ended up here, and I'm much happier.
Obviously, you're into horror, or are you into like rom-coms too?
I actually am.
Yeah?
Honestly, if I had a choice, I'll watch comedy before I watch a horror movie any day. I can handle most horror movies, but the Saw, human torture, that's not for me. I like monsters. I like Pumpkinhead. I like Hellraiser. Those are kinds of things that I like. But if I had a choice, I'm gonna choose Chris Farley over Doug Bradley.
Why do you think that you do not like the movies like Saw? Because of what you do here?
No, it's more just knowing that someone can do that to somebody else. It's the human on human aspect that I don't like. There's enough of that in our world. I don't want to see it in my make-believe time. I'd much rather see Sigourney Weaver taking on aliens than I would, John Wayne Gacy hunting his next victim. It's historical, and it's good to know that's there, but that's definitely not my interest.
So top 5 favorite rom-com movies or comedy movies then?
Geez. As far as romantic comedies go, I actually like Long Shot quite a bit with Charlize Theron and Seth Rogen. It's a stupid little movie, but it's delightful. Trying to think what other rom-coms I like. I'm more of the slapstick kind of guy, like Chris Farley, like I said, like Tommy Boy.
Okay.
Love that movie. Top Secret with Val Kilmer.
That's a good one.
That's one of my favorites.
That's a classic.
Yeah. That style of movie, that whole slapstick kind of era of Top Secret and an Airplane, that whole run of movies is just, I can watch those over and over again.
Amazon Women on the Moon. Have you seen that?
Oh,
one?
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kentucky Fried Movie.
Yeah, Kentucky Fried Movie. And then they did movie 43 recently, which is kind of like a callback to Kentucky Fried Movie.
Oh, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, that one's very silly too. Same kind of format as Kentucky Fried Movie. Same kind of like little bites, little skits. So it's very, very, very silly.
I think people would be very interested to find that out about you. I mean, you have an oddity store with a bunch of wet specimens and animal skulls, taxidermy, horror comic books, and then you like Chris Farley and Charlize Theron.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's one of those things that I've seen a lot of the similar kind of aspects to our clientele too. Even though you can come in here and pick up a dead puppy in a jar, when you go home, you still might want to watch something funny, you know? And it was the same thing when we started the store. You know, we were selling taxidermy at markets, selling, you know, wet specimens and skulls. And everybody who was buying those things was wearing Star Wars t-shirts or Marvel t-shirts. And that's kind of where we thought these things go together pretty well, you know? And then Dungeons and Dragons really fit into that too. You know, it fits in that nerd culture part of it. And a lot of it comes down to a couple. So you have the girl walks in, walks straight to web specimens, picks out her puppy in a jar, her new fur friend. Guy walks over here, grabs himself a comic. You know, and it's not always that way. It could be flip-flopped and whatever it is, but that's a very common dynamic in the store for sure.
I think it's good that you realize that there is that dynamic between couples, because if you're in a relationship and everybody likes the same thing, whether it be friendships or anything, if everybody likes the same thing, I mean, if you're 80% on par with everybody, that's good. But if it's 100%, it seems to be really destructive.
No, for sure. And it honestly, like one of my favorite things to do is when I'll see a group of friends, whether they're kids or older, and you look at the, you know, 4 or 5 friends walking down the street and none of them look the same. You know, those friends have been there together for a long time. They've grown different directions, but they've all stayed friends that long. You know, you could have a goth kid and a preppy kid and a sporty kid all hang out together. They've been friends probably since they were kids, all wearing, you know, Oshkosh, you know, and then they grew up and became different things, but stayed friends. Like that kind of stuff. I don't know. I like seeing the path in the story of what that could have been, you know.
Having said that, what kind of people do you get in here? I mean, you've touched on it a little bit, but like, what is the range?
It's I would say it's our main clientele, our main people who come in here are 20 to 30 goth girls. That's probably the most common people who come in here. We do have quite a decent following now of nerdy guys coming in to get their comics. We do pull box services, so I have a whole list of people that I pull comics for to make sure they get the issues that every month and every week, that they're going to make sure they're following that story. I make sure I order the right cover for them because there's variant covers, things like that. So it's a little comic concierge service we do here. But I mean, honestly, it's everybody. You know, we've had full families come through here. Only a few kids have cried. Most of the kids are pretty tough. Most of them are very fascinated by what's going on. We did have one dad brought his 2 youngest kids in. I think they were probably maybe 4 and 5. And the little boy was super all about it when he came in. He was digging it. He was loving everything he saw. And then I think he realized that these were actually real animals that had died, and he lost it. And he started crying. And this was a Saturday. And they left, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, it's not a big deal. And I tried to give him a little, like a seashell to calm him down or something like that. And they left. Next day, they came back. And the dad was like, he begged me to come back. Like he cried for 10 minutes while he was here, and then as soon as he left, he was like, "Can we go back? Can we go back? Can we go back?" And bugged him for the whole day. So they came back again. It was nice little stories like that. That's fun.
You might have inspired a kid to follow in your footsteps.
You never know. You never know. I mean, or even being a doctor. You know, I mean, a lot of these things are veterinarian. A lot of these things can lead different paths. You know, I had a veterinarian come in today who just loves having wet specimens at their desk because she deals with those kinds of things all the time.
That is a good point that I didn't even think about. That, you were saying the goth girls. Yeah. And that's what you would probably think that comes in here is like Marilyn Manson fanatics, yeah, goth girls. But doctors, nurses, they deal with this stuff too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just weird that this might be looked at as like a subculture when your doctor had to do all this stuff, had to have the wet specimens, had to have the aborted fetuses or whatever happened to the fetuses. Yeah. That is a good thing to bring up because you just think of, it's just the outcasts that are into this, but no.
Yeah. And it's funny because people come in and they're like, I'm wearing my work clothes right now, but I'm really cool. I'm like, it's okay. We're not judging you when you walk in here, honestly. Anybody can walk in here as straight laced as they want to be. We're not judging you. That's not who we are. That's not what we do.
What are you you do the D&D. What are some other events that you throw here?
So we do like night market events where we have local artists and vendors line up in front of the store and sell their stuff. Usually it's similar to what we do here. A lot of dome art, a lot of wet specimens, a lot of skulls, things like that. A lot of entomology pieces, a lot of bugs, but also clothes and prints and straight paintings, things like that. We've had a guy come through who does tintypes. A lot of variations on the art. And then we'll have a food truck outside, and then we have Ozzy Blood, our sword swallower friend. He's been a friend of mine for 14 years now. And he's an incredible performer. He's a showman to a T. And he does sword swallowing, and he puts hooks through his nose, and it's just fantastic stuff. So he comes to almost every event we do. We just love having him here. And then we'll do something fun. We like this next event coming up. We're doing pictures of Frank the Bunny from Donnie Darko. So we got a guy dressing up like the Frank the Bunny because it's the day before Easter. So we wanted to have a little anti-Easter thing. During Christmas, we'll do Krampus pictures. Everybody's asking me to do Krampus again, and I'm like, well, we got to wait till December. That's when Krampus comes around. So we try to do little fun little things like that. And then we also do a charity raffle. So we'll pick a animal shelter, animal rescue, and then do a raffle, giving away, prizes and things like that here at the store. And then all the proceeds for that raffle will go directly to that animal sanctuary. So.
You said tintaffel, is that correct?
Tintypes. Tintype photos.
What is that?
So tintype photos are the old way of taking photos. It was when you see those big long lens cameras, and then they're developing it in the dark rooms, things like that. And they're developing them on, technically it's actually iron. They're ferrotypes. Tintypes was the way to make it not sound as expensive. Back in the day, tin was more expensive than iron was. So they would say, one thing when they meant another. So we've had a guy come through and he does these tintype photography where he does the emulsions, he does the darkroom work, and he'll take the photos, right there in his studio or whatever he does. He also does traveling things too. So it's a really cool process. And the way the light comes through the tintype is not like normal cameras does. It can't see yellow and orange. So when you have like a yellow and orange thing, it'll just look black. So it's a weird kind of like way to kind of play with the light and things like that. Like we had one guy come through from Pittsburgh, Joseph Wyman, who's also a fantastic artist. And he did a whole setup here during Free Comic Book Day. And talking with him and learning the process of that whole art and science is just, it blew my mind, honestly.
With all the taxidermy and, you got books. I'm looking at a book on Dracula.
Yeah.
And you got a coffin with an upside-down cross.
Yeah.
What's the hauntings like here? Or are there hauntings?
There definitely is. I've actually had paranormal investigations come through, and they've picked up on a few things. The transport coffin has been one that they've picked up on quite a bit. And there's actually a pair of polio braces in the back there that I've actually had two people hit on those before. I've only seen a few things happen here that have been out of the ordinary. We had a lot of dolls that came from an estate sale, and they were from a deceased fortune teller. The dolls were hand-carved faces, and they were incredibly anatomically correct, down to the smallest details. And they were only yay big.
Wow.
Very strange. She also built little houses for them in shoeboxes with little doors and windows on the outside of the boxes and like kitchen scenes or altar scenes or whatever will be inside the boxes. And so we got these dolls, and our friend Pete, who makes all of our coffins, he made nice little shadow box coffins. We transferred all their accoutrements, all their little belongings, put them in the coffins, and then hung them on the wall. We had about 9 or 10 of them. And I did a little cascade kind of like waterfall effect. And I guess one of them was too far behind another case, and she didn't like that. Within about 10 minutes, the hippo tusk we had exploded. Half of it stayed on the rack, the other half blew over top of the rack and clattered on the ground. We took her off the wall and put her right in front of the register and said hi to her every morning, made sure she was feeling included. We had no problems from that point on. She's since gone to a friend of ours, and she makes sure to say hi every morning. If she misses saying hi to her in the morning, her radio will change stations, her TV won't work right. Like, she always has weird problems if she doesn't say hi to her in the morning. So Patricia is definitely making sure she's well kept.
Do you think it's evil spirits, or do you think it's the spirit of...
I think there's probably some deceased people hanging around here. But I always say, I think there's quite a few of them here, and I think they're all just having fun, honestly. I've been told by a couple different mediums and paranormal investigations that this spot feels like a crossroads, and not really like a crossroads between life and death, but like crossroads between one place and another. And it still acts as that for the afterlife, and it's strange that we put this story here, but it still kind of feels like that might be a purpose, I don't look into these things too deeply, but it's still kind of cool to think about. We've had dolls that have been, from deceased, people who we got through estate sales, things like that, besides the deceased fortune teller dolls. And had a couple that have been sold and then returned because they were just too haunted. They get brought back with rosaries on their neck. They don't want any money back. They just want to make sure they don't have the doll anymore. And then I'll resell them, make sure that people know the story, that they know what they're getting into. I never tell I don't hide anything as far as that goes. I make sure everybody knows what they're buying. So,
do you think spirits of the deceased come with the items, or do you think there was already some here?
Both, I think, honestly. I think mostly they come with the items. I think there's a lot of attachment with things, I mean, I know that I personally have a lot of attachment with inanimate objects. I definitely, if I have to throw away, a stuffed animal or something like that, I like, I feel bad, So I know that I personally have those kind of attachments. I'm sure everyone does. And I feel like if you had something like that for a very long time, whether it's a baby doll you had since you were a kid, there might be a lot of attachment there. And if your spirit moves on, there might be things that get left behind.
Yeah, so some of your soul gets left in that item that meant so much to you.
Yeah. I don't think that's very far-fetched at all. I think there's a lot of things we don't know. And that could be one of them. That's for sure.
There is a theory, I forget who came up with it, that objects do keep... They have I think the term or the phrase he uses is objects have memories.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a whole study about if like with water, and they did like a study where they would write different words in the water, and they would study the wavelength of how that water would react, and there was different wavelengths on the different water. And I think it was a Japanese study about like 20, 30 years ago. When I read about that one, I was very intrigued by that, for sure.
Let's take a quick break.
Yes, please.
Is there a market for like other oddity shops where you guys trade or barter?
We actually do work with one who gets us some human stuff, because that's kind of a very niche market. So there's definitely some trade back and forth. I don't feel like there's any kind of competition, really, because we're all in different cities and different states, I hope that's the way they feel, too. I know that there was actually... Someone told me that they went to Louisiana and visited Dark Matter, which is a really great store down there. They're right in the French Quarter. Beautiful store. And she wanted to buy a dome, like cloche dome, like my buddy here, but it had a bunch of butterflies and things in it. And the guy was like, it's probably not going to make it. Like, I can try to ship it, but it's going to be dust by the time it gets to you. It's not a great thing to ship. Glass and butterflies through a shipping process these days, it's very, very risky. So he's like, you can go to Cemetery Pulp. He's like, I know they're out there in Las Vegas where you're living, and she didn't even know we existed. So it was a great way to kind of be, recommended by somebody when she was on vacation. So it was a really cool story that she told me. That made my heart feel good. That's for sure.
Yeah, it seems like you'd want to stick together because, hey, I have a customer that wants something like what you just showed, and then you go, okay, I got this.
Yeah. No, I definitely, anybody who's, traveling, I've actually had quite a few people come through and say, oh, I'm going across the country and I hit oddity shops every state I go to. I'll recommend Cleveland Curiosities, and I'll recommend, Petunia Loomis, and recommend, a lot of different places across the country that I have talked to personally and visited myself that are just fantastic shops. Beautiful shops, too. Some of them are like, drawing a blank. Rest in Pieces in Virginia is a gorgeous shop. It's just the way it's put together and curated is just out of this world.
Are there issues with, say, somebody buys a skull or some human bones? Is there issues transporting that across state lines or shipping that?
The only ones you really run into are protected species. So in California, bears would be hard to ship back to California. But there's only 3 states you can't have human remains. You can't own human remains. And that's Louisiana, Georgia, and Tennessee. And a lot of that kind of comes from the above ground graves. Because you get hurricanes that come through, and then above ground graves, you might get a skull floating through your front yard, So some of that's what I've been told, at least. It comes from a few things like that. But as far as like transporting a lot of things, there's a lot of ways around TSA, honestly. You can still transport, taxidermy, no problem. Even wet specimens, I have ways of doing that too. And I make sure everybody knows who comes in. I have ways that I can pack these things that you can fly with it, which is definitely the preferred way to go. If you have a choice of putting it in a box and shipping it versus holding it on your lap and flying with it, definitely fly with it. Much safer, much more control over it.
Do you ever run into issues with law enforcement coming in going, where did you get that fetus? Or
No, thankfully. We haven't had any issues whatsoever. And everything we do is above board. We're licensed taxidermists. We try to make sure everything's completely legal, completely above board. We have the papers of where these things, the human pieces have come from, things like that. And you can tell they're medical specimens. They're prepared with the pins and things like that where they used to hang in a classroom. So it's very obvious that we weren't out murdering people and taking their bones. I can't even hunt, honestly. I come from a small town in Ohio where that was a big thing to do, and I cannot do it, honestly. It's not in me at all.
What is your favorite part of owning an Odyssey store?
It's never the same thing. Every day is different. I love the comics. I love the D&D. I love the wet specimens. I love the skulls. I love when I get new things. When I find pieces that I wouldn't normally see. When I get things from estate sales that are really weird and old. I love discovering things every day.
If you could describe the store to somebody that has no idea what oddities are, what would you say?
The thing I always say first is we're for the weird and nerdy. We have a lot of weird, we have a lot of nerdy. And that's a big broad stroke of it. But I usually go to, we have skulls, we have dead things in jars, we have D&D, we have comics, we have taxidermy, we have big giant mounts in the walls, we even have a live snake.
Chris, thanks a lot for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about it.
Thank you.